All right. Again, I want to say that, and I'm going to put this in the notes of the episode. We are not licensed mental health practitioners. We are just talking about these subjects here. And I will list in the description the resources that I used to talk about this. You and I were kept discussing was the three of them, the three, I'd say, con people ultimately, the three with the double lives, B and Jane and Eddie. Were they psychopaths? Were they sociopaths? And the lines kind of blur with that too. I mean, I do think people misuse the terms often, and they do. And I learned that in my research right before we started recording, because the three of them, even though they were the same in many ways, they were very different. We see detachment in some ways, we see cold calculation, but to varying degrees. So first of all, and I'm getting my information from Psychology Today, which they're talking about the DSM-5, and then I'm going to link some videos by Dr. Ramani, who is a licensed, board-certified, amazing psychiatrist. Psychopathy and sociopathy, they're actually not terms that people are labeled with. We kind of use them, I guess, in like pop psychology. In the DSM-5, they would be under antisocial personality disorders, and there are different levels, and we won't get into all of that. So even though these aren't official DSM-5 terms, psychopathy is often thought to be linked to brain differences. There's emotional coldness, lacking empathy, remorse, very shallow emotions. They can be charming and manipulative, often superficially charming, calculated. They are risk-taking, but it's controlled. They plan their crimes carefully, and they are less likely to get caught. So yes, there are a lot of serial killers that people will consider psychopaths. They cannot form emotional attachments. Again, because there's dysfunctions in their amygdala in their brain. Their relationships are usually manipulative and for personal gain. So it could be money. It could be like, if it's in terms of like a serial killer, like getting off on doing that. It could be, sexual. They could be using someone for sexual reasons. And they have very low anxiety because they can remain calm under pressure because they do not have empathy. And the biggest thing too is they don't have regrets of what they've done. Whereas sociopathy is often tied to early trauma, abuse, or neglect. It's environmental causes. They have emotional outbursts. They're more likely to display anger or impulsivity. They can form attachments, few, but they may care about certain individuals or groups. Not everybody, but they can have feelings for, their partner, their mother, whatever. Actual sympathy and empathy for that person. They have disorganized behavior. Their crimes or violence may be more erratic or spontaneous. So in one of the videos, Dr. Ramani said, it's like if there were a bar fight and there were two guys in the bar fight and one of them started it and he's just going for it and he has no remorse or empathy for this person he's beating up, where the other person he's beating up stays together, keeps it together, and then lays out this calculated plan how to murder the other guy later on and get away with it. That's the difference. Yeah. I mean, again, in a nutshell. And then sociopathy also has higher anxiety and irritability. They tend to have difficulty maintaining stability in life. And also another thing is with both of these traits, people tend to have had issues before the age of 15, as in like, stealing, beating people up, but also this could have been a result of their environment. So not everyone who has a rough upbringing who got into being a kleptomaniac or a thug, a gang member, they're not necessarily going to become a sociopath or a psychopath, but this is a big giveaway. So when they are studying people who do have sociopathy, psychopathy, when they have these personality disorders, a lot of them have had issues in the past when they were adolescents and younger. Yeah. Anyway, long story short, when it comes to Jane, I do not think she's a psychopath at all. I think that she is definitely she's a product of her environment. Like we said, she became this way as a mode of survival. So maybe there are some quote unquote sociopathic tendencies, but I do believe that she can have empathy. I do believe that she can have remorse.
No, I totally agree with this because I think over here, both with psychopathy and sociopathy, interlinking factor is one, lack of empathy and lack of remorse. Of course, in psychopathy, there is like almost absolute lack of empathy and no remorse for the consequences of your actions or what actions you've taken. I think with sociopathy, there is an awareness of this lack of empathy and lack of remorse, but there are intervening or extenuating circumstances, which I think can flip the switch. Because now, coming to all the three characters, B, Jane, and Eddie, I would say Jane, like you said, is a product of her circumstance. She's had a very turbulent childhood. The story is, at least Jane's story, is very similar to the Jane in Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, in the sense that they are orphaned children. They've come from turbulent families. They've come from turbulent group homes, situations which were volatile, situations which would have not made the person in these circumstances feel safe, especially in their early developmental stage. So I think Jane over here is just trying to survive. And yes, she's white lying out of situations. She's calculating a lot of her moves. But I don't think the core of her personality has switched enough in order to actually commit crimes which would relate to psychopathy or sociopathy. And in a way, if we see, all these three characters are products of their circumstances. All three characters do not come from affluent families. They do not come from a stable home life. In the case of Jane, we know she's in the foster care system. Conditions in group homes are terrible. Like, there's apparent neglect of children in these group home setups. Now, parallel to her circumstances, we can see B. Now, B has a family, she has parents, but they are completely neglectful of her. Her dad is abusive. Her mom is an alcoholic. So she perceives that neglect from a very early childhood onset. And she carries that feeling of, I could be betrayed by people who are very close to me. Which is why I think for a lot of time she keeps all her cards very close to her vest. She kind of understands that she needs to calculate her moves in order to get ahead in life and in order to come out of the same life that her mom and dad have. She does not want to replay that kind of a role ever again. So I would say B, is she sociopathic? Yeah, kind of. Because she does go ahead and off people. And also we have to see that during the course of say 6 to 8 months when the story takes place, she keeps her shit together when she's in that panic room. She does not let herself fall apart. She does not give in to the apprehension that she will be killed, and she does not start losing it. She knows she has a game ahead of her. Will she win? Won't she win? That depends on her IQ, her intellect, her smartness. But yeah, I think B is more a sociopathic person because again her lack of empathy is a little too high when she kills Blanche. That's kind of true. But then again,
It's hard. It was very hard when it came to, for me, it was the hardest when it came to B.
yeah, because with B, the coldness of her action of killing her friend was very abrupt. It was not something she had planned all along for years altogether. But the way she did it, the low
But she
anxiety.
planned it still, though. She
Yeah,
still planned it out beforehand. It wasn't
yeah.
spur of the moment.
That's true.
Sorry to
That's
interrupt.
true.
Yeah.
No, that's true. She did
Yeah.
plan it. She did plan it, but I'm wondering if B was planning it in a way where she was rationalizing her actions rather than just doing it from a place of compulsion. It's like, I have to kill people. No, she's not like that. She's like, I have to kill maybe my mom and my best friend because I need a certain outcome of them being killed and me not having to face the consequences of it.
Right. And she didn't regret it, though. She didn't regret either of them. And actually, with you bringing up how calm she stayed during that time in the room, because even reading her accounts, it was like, I mean, granted, she wrote a kind of false account because she wanted Jane to find this journal. But I think that could lean toward psychopathy because her anxiety levels weren't raised. She just was always trying to think ahead of what Eddie would do. But also we don't see in B's background any violence or I guess bad tendencies in her younger years. She came from a very bad home, but that again, it doesn't mean that you can't be like this. I do think that her surroundings made her, and it could be that. It could be. However her brain chemistry is, because again, this is why we're talking about this, because we're talking about fictional characters. We are not going to try to diagnose anybody real. But her brain could already have had the tendency to be psychopathic, and the triggers were there. Because I've watched a lot of serial killer documentaries and all that, and they say it's pretty much that biologic, it's nature and nurture. Biologically, people like this are born a certain way, but it's what happens to them, especially in youth, that triggers that whatever amygdala response, right? I really went back and forth on this, but I think when we're fleshing it out, the two of us, I feel like B is tending towards psychopathy. I'm not going to say she is
Yeah.
100%, whereas
Because
Jane,
we do have to keep in
uh-huh,
mind the fact that she tries to save Eddie at the end. So if she was completely bereft of being able to have attachments, being able to have human connections, I don't think in this kind of a situation where she could have gotten out of it, she could have overpowered Jane, she could have just left her in the burning house, and she could have escaped completely. But why did she go back for Eddie? This,
I haven't told you about the alternate ending yet, so.
okay.
But see, this is up to the author. It was up to the author. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. But honestly, in real life, I feel like it would be more like the alternate ending that I'm about to go into. But yeah, no, I agree. But because again, people aren't all the same. So yes, you can have a Norman Bates from Psycho who was a psychopath. He was cold and calculated, but he did have some love for this one person, his mother.
Yeah.
And he kept her around. And that's what I'm sure psychiatrists and psychologists are going to say is like, there's no one size fits all. Whereas with Eddie, definitely sociopathic tendencies. He's that charming. He knows when to turn it on but to get what he wants. It's a means to an end.
Yeah. I think he has the symptoms of sociopathy, but not the full diagnosis of sociopathy.
Right. And he's not a psychopath.
Yeah. I don't think he's a psychopath at all. He doesn't have it in himself to do something to be. When he knows that he is in a vulnerable position, she could have come and, I don't know, overpowered him in some way. She could have maybe had a backup plan. He didn't know that she had a backup plan. In case Trip woke up or in case Eddie showed up, she might have had a backup plan. There's no way B would have just gone ahead with plan A. But the fact that
Yeah.
I just think he didn't have it in him to go to that extent. He can do it as a means of, how do I say, in for food, shelter, and clothing, he can be sociopathic. But beyond that, he's not gonna do anything that would be criminal in nature.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, here's the real quick from the DSM-5 for the antisocial personality disorder. The behaviors that they look for before the age of 15, a person has to show at least 3 of these behaviors since the age of 15, since or before the age of 15. Ignores laws, lies and deceives, impulsive, irritable and aggressive, reckless, irresponsible, or no guilt / no remorse. Hurts others but doesn't feel bad about it. So that's what they're looking for, well, pre and post 15. And again, I'm not an expert, so correct me in the comments. They have to have a minimum of 3 of those. Because I mean, I know people that have 1 or 2 of those, and part of the I forgot what section it is of the DSM that they put the ASPDs in, but I want to say the overarching thing is narcissism with all of them. And I have been up close and personal for, let's just say, a long time with, I grew up with someone who was a narcissist, but I did not see all of these things in that person. I think it was just narcissism with, some other things. But anyway, yeah, it's really interesting. And I think all of them in the end, they themselves were number one to themselves. And that is one of the biggest traits for both of those. But at least Eddie and Jane could have empathy for at least a few other people.
Yeah, they could have. Completely agree. I think there's a difference between having tendencies versus fitting under a full diagnosis. Like, I think even sorry, what was her name? The one who
Dr. Ramani.
Dr. Ramani, yeah. So, in some of the podcasts that I've heard of Dr. Ramani, she mentions that she has come across a lot of people who have narcissistic tendencies, but she would not be able to diagnose them with narcissistic personality disorder.
Again, it's not one size fits all. And I I've been watching Dr. Amani's videos for a few years now, just to like,
She's brilliant.
I mean, because I think she's fantastic. And I think a lot of us who are self-aware, and those of us who are into psychology, which I am, and my minor was in sociology in school. I think those of us who are aware like to look up, other people, but also we like to see if we have those traits.
Yeah.
But I think then if you're worried about you yourself having, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic, borderline, psychopathy, then you don't. Because
Because
if you had these, you wouldn't be looking it up.
and you wouldn't be self introspecting and self reflecting on your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, your responses
Yeah.
and your reactions to the world around you.
Yeah. So that made me feel a lot better because I mean, I think that, and again, there's still so much research that they're doing on the brain and that still they need to do and they're finding out. But, a lot of, and I don't even want to call them all brain disorders, but they are inherited, and like,
A lot of
I'm
genetics
talking about
plays a
myself.
part. Genetics and even generational
Yeah.
trauma plays a huge role in, I think, passing on certain genes which may determine your mental condition and your mental health.
Yeah. Your propensity towards said things. And again, things that could happen to you in childhood that could cause these to make themselves apparent, just bring these up within you.